might backfire and bite the entire country in the ass later on. Let me explain. So even if you are liking some of the things that Trump has been doing recently, even if you think this is absolutely what needed to be done, for example, deporting the El Salvadorian gang. So over the weekend, Donald Trump rounded up, the Trump administration, wasn't Donald Trump himself, of course, but the Trump administration went and rounded up a bunch of who they accuse of being Venezuelan gang members. Now, it's highly possible that every single member that was rounded up and put on this plane to El Salvador was in fact a violent gang member. But there's also the possibility that there was maybe one or two or a handful or more who were falsely accused and just kind of lumped in and suddenly whisked away essentially in the middle of the night to not even Venezuela, back home where they would maybe go, but instead to El Salvador, where they're now put in prison, according to the president of El Salvador. They're now in essentially prison labor camps. Now, look, none of us want to see these Salvadorian gangs, the Venezuelan gangs here in the United States. We don't like what they were doing. Nobody has any love lost for gang members. But the fact that they were rounded up and due process was completely just done away with, and these people were disappeared essentially to El Salvador, should be a cause for alarm for everybody. These people were not illegal aliens. It's important to remember that they were here legally. They either had some sort of refugee or asylum or they had some reason to be here and they were given permission to be here. The reason why the Trump administration was able to round them up and send them away, and it wasn't even that they were able to, because actually a judge came out and while they were in the air said, you have to turn the planes around. The Trump administration defied the courts, which is a separate branch of government, an equal branch of government, defied the courts and shipped them off to El Salvador anyway, and then just kind of shrugged and said, whoops, they're already gone. What are we going to do about it? And we'll just take it up with the courts rather than actually turning the plane around and bringing these people back. Now, again, I'm not in support of these people being here if they're truly violent gang members. We don't want them here, even if they're non-violent gang members, but they've joined the gang. They should understand that there's consequences of joining a violent gang, even if they themselves have not been violent. But the fact is, we don't know because due process was completely circumvented. And that should be alarming to every single person who values the Constitution, who values democracy, who values a free nation. This should be completely alarming to everybody that this was able to be done. If it can happen to this group and they use the Enemies Act is what the Trump administration is citing. They're saying it's the Alien Enemies Act. In fact, I think we have Donald Trump talking about that. He brings it up. Let's actually watch this.
Criticism that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals. Murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
Okay, and none of us want these people here if that's true. None of us. We all want them gone. Absolutely. Great job. Except you have to prove that these people are actually all of those things that you said that they were, especially if they're here legally because they have refugee status or immigration status of some sort. These are not illegals that you could just round up and say, well, you're not supposed to be here, you're undocumented, and therefore we have every right to actually repatriate you back to wherever. That is not the situation. So yeah, we want them gone, but we want them gone with due process. I don't want to be whisked away to Guantanamo without due process, and I don't think you do either. But that's what this precedent sets, especially if you're able to invoke the Alien Enemies Act. This is what the reporter was asking, saying, you've invoked this act, it's only been used 3 times, and during times of war. And Trump says, well, this is a time of war. But the times that we've used it have actually been kind of a stain on the nation. I mean, the internment of Japanese, that's how they were able to do it, was through the Alien Enemies Act. And now he's doing that against this group of people. And the reality is, because they already shipped him off, none of us are ever going to find out if any of these people were actually innocent and that they were just lumped together with this group. I mean, maybe you have some father that is in that group who is absolutely not a gang member, and he's raising his kids on his own. And now he's been whisked away in the middle of the night, and his children are wondering what the heck happened, and he's not a gang member. I mean, now some of you might say, well, okay, we're going to make some mistakes, and that's too bad, but overall, we got all the good, we got all the rest of them. That's not really how a democracy works. You yourself have to be proven guilty of the crime, not just, well, you got lumped in with a bunch of other people who are also criminals. Too bad. It's just too bad. And also what this really is a lot similar, it's very similar. Well, no, actually, that's a different one. I was just thinking it's similar to J6, but the one that is similar to J6 is the rounding up of the protesters, of the green card protest holders. We've been covering that case of Mohammad Khalil, who is still in jail, still awaiting to find out what his fate is after he was involved in protests, maybe even organized the protests, maybe he was even the mediator for the protests, but they have not caught him on tape committing any sort of violent crime. They have him as an organizer of protests, as somebody who was a mediator of protests. These are their claims. Yet they don't have him actually committing any sort of violence. And what that reminds me a lot of, now a lot of you might say, well, that doesn't matter. He's on a green card, so it's a privilege to be in this country. And he committed this was a violation and he should get out of here. And he was organizing the protests, and that's bad enough. That is like what happened with J6. I mean, you had all of the Proud Boys. You had the leader of the Proud Boys. What was he sentenced to? Like 20-something years in jail, and he wasn't even in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. But they claimed, well, you were the organizer of an insurrection, and it was a violent insurrection, and you were the organizer of this insurrection. They had no evidence that he had planned an insurrection or prodded anybody to commit an insurrection or told anybody to do any violence, commit any acts of violence. And yet he got, because he was an organizer and the people showed up and the people did do some violent things, he got lumped into that and sentenced to 20-something years in jail. That, many of us believed, was wrong. That was a violation. How can you possibly do that to somebody? You're claiming that they organized a violent protest. Sometimes protests get out of hand. You can't control everybody who's going to be involved. And you can't then lock somebody up for 20 years. And that's essentially, the Trump administration fought against that. That was one of the things they campaigned on, which was the Democrats were lawless. The Democrats had lost their way and that they were using political persecution. Well, what is this? When you're locking up a student protester and saying, well, because he organized it, then he gets punished, and that is to be sent away. This is actually Marco Rubio talking about this on Face the Nation. He was asked, did this person commit any crimes? There's no documentation of this person committing any of these crimes. This is what Marco Rubio had to say.
I want to ask you about a decision you made to revoke a student visa for someone at Columbia University this past week. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, the administration needs to be careful. It's targeting real promoters of terrorism, not breaking the great promise of a green card by deporting anyone with controversial political views. Can you substantiate any form of material support for terrorism, specifically to Hamas, from this Columbia student? Or was it simply that he was espousing a controversial political point of view?
Well, not just the student. We're going to do more. In fact, we every day now we're approving visa revocations. And if that visa led to a green card, the green card process as well. And here's why. It's very simple. When you apply to enter the United States and you get a visa, you are a guest. And you're coming as a student, you're coming as a tourist or what have you. And in it, you have to make certain assertions. And if you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events, that runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America. It's that simple. So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa. Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
But
it's that straightforward.
Is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, they take over. I mean, you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings.
They
vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down
I'm
colleges.
asking about the specific justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other. We don't want it. We don't need these people in our country. We never should have allowed them in the first place. If he had told us, I'm going over there and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down, people can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized, we never would have let him in. We never would have let him in to begin with. And now that he's doing it and he's here, he's going to leave, and so are others, and we're going to keep doing it. And by the way, I find it ironic that a lot of these people out there defending the First Amendment speech, alleged free speech rights of these Hamas sympathizers, they had no problem, pressuring social media to censor American political speech. So I think it's ironic and hypocritical. But the bottom line is this. If you are in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, to participate in vandalism, to participate in acts of rebellion and riots on campus, we never would have let you in if we had known that. And now that we know it,
is it only
pro-Palestinian
pro-Palestinian people who are going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Aragua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did, as a terrorist organization. We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand. We don't want people in our country that are going to be committing crimes and undermining our national security or the public safety. It's that simple. Especially people that are here as guests. That is what a visa is. I don't know where we've gotten it in our head that a visa is some sort of birthright. It is not. It is a visitor into our country. And if you violate the terms of your visitation, you are going to leave.
Well, a lot of us think that the terrorists in this country are the Israelis and not the pro-Palestinian protesters. So it was a fair question. Are you going to be also going after other points of view, like those who support Israel and those who blatantly come out saying that they love to see the murder of the children in Palestine? That seems to be a very terroristic viewpoint. But none of them are being rounded up. None of them are having their visas revoked, and they're not being shipped back to Israel. The justification that he uses when he says he was an organizer. So again, they don't have any evidence of Mahmoud Khalil doing any acts of violence. They say that he was an organizer, that he was a mediator. I mean, what is the point of a protest if you're not going to mediate the protest? What is the point of the protest if you aren't going to try to negotiate? That is what you're hoping for. You're hoping that your voice will be heard and someone will come out and actually try to negotiate with you. So is that a crime to negotiate as part of a protest? But he points out the negotiation. He points out that he was maybe an organizer. And again, did the leaders of the Proud Boys who were locked up for 20 years, did they deserve to be handed those sentences when they weren't even on the premises in Washington, D.C. because they happen to be leaders of Proud Boys and Proud Boys happen to be involved in January 6th? So the hypocrisy here, when we're saying that we voted for Donald Trump because we were wanting to restore law and order, we were wanting to restore the Constitution, it wasn't just we just didn't like it when you did it, but now we're going to do it and you just have to deal with it. That is a very dangerous road to go down. And what's, I think, the most dangerous about what Trump is doing with the rounding up the people and shipping them off, green card holders, using the Alien Enemies Act, which has been used against American citizens in the past, the thing that's the most, I think, what we have to remember is that Democrats will always do whatever it is that the Republicans do, and the Republicans will do whatever the Democrats do. So whenever one of them opens up a can of worms that doesn't actually put the worms back in, which is almost impossible to do, as we've seen, then the other side just retaliates again. So all we're doing is we're just opening up the door for when the leader comes into power, AOC, which I do believe Democrats will vote for her. I do think that she will be probably the first female president of the United States, will probably be AOC. I mean, at this point, probably. And that is frightening. That is very frightening to a lot of us. And what type of power will AOC wield when Trump has set the precedent? Democrats said it, I understand that. But Trump ran on restoring and reversing out of that. And yet he's instead just run wild with it with his own agenda. And so what will an AOC do? And will you like it when AOC uses the same powers that Trump is using and she says, well, I'm saving the country, and people cheer. Half the country cheers. All of the liberals and the Democrats start cheering and they say, yes, do it, do it. That is a frightening prospect to us. So even though we might support Trump on certain things, you might support some of the measures that he's doing, some of the sentiments, you have to be careful about supporting something when the power is going above and beyond the actual Constitution. The idea is that, well, these are guests, they're not allowed to speak. Now, the gang members, that's different. If you commit a violent crime, then yes, you can legally be deported. And that would be proven in court very simply, actually. But if you're a protester and you're exercising your First Amendment right, you have that First Amendment right. This has been upheld by the Supreme Court for a century. You have the First Amendment if you are standing on U.S. soil. If you are on U.S. jurisdiction, you have the First Amendment. It doesn't matter if you are a legal resident or if you are illegally here on this soil, you still have the right to that free speech. And that is being tested right now. And of course, and I think it will go to the courts, and I think the courts will uphold the Constitution. And I think that Trump will be wrong. But it won't. But the chilling effect has already happened, and the precedent has already been set. And Democrats will use this, and they will wield it to their own advantage when it's their turn. They really will. Another thing that Trump has been doing that is the question of whether or not he's gone too far is questioning Biden's auto pen, questioning Biden's the pardons. This is something that Trump. Let's see. He wrote this out. The pardons that sleepy Joe Biden gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because the fact that they were done by auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the Unselect Committee who destroyed deleted all the evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without knowledge or consent of the president in the history of our country, of the worst president in the history of our country, Joe Biden. So I don't like presidential pardons at all. I don't think they should exist. They're very queenly or kingly. They're very monarchy. So I don't even like it. But the fact is they exist. And Donald Trump to be going and I don't like a lot of the pardons that Biden gave. I mean, the Fauci and friends, I don't like any of it. But the fact is Joe Biden did do them, even if it was done by auto pen, which is something that has been used over and over and over again. If you're not familiar with an auto pen, the auto pen is literally this mechanism that'll just sign Joe Biden's or Donald Trump's signature, and all these presidents use it. And they use it with their knowledge, and it's been upheld in court as legitimate. So the fact that Trump is now wanting to go and undo all of this, well, again, when AOC's in power, she'll do the same thing. I mean, what do you think she's going to do when she gets in there? You think the first thing she's going to do is undo everything that Trump did, including all the pardons, now that Trump has opened up this can of worms. So anybody that was pardoned by Donald Trump is no longer safe. So not only did he make it not safe for anybody that Biden pardoned, he's now made it unsafe for anyone he has pardoned. I mean, that's how these games are played. These are stupid games. These are stupid games. When you exert your power, you overuse the power, the other side is going to use it, but Trump doesn't care. Because by then he'll be, what will it matter, I guess, and we'll just continue playing these political games. I just want the country to be fixed. I want us to finally get to a point where we actually have a working system that isn't playing all these games, and yet I don't see things getting better, and I wish they would get better under Donald Trump. A lot of me wanted him into the Oval Office because I wanted to restore free speech, but now I'm getting a crackdown on a different type of free speech. I wanted to, I was getting censored over COVID, but now I'm going to get censored over Palestine. I mean, this isn't what I think the American people voted for when they put Donald Trump in, hoping to restore law and order, hoping to unwind the fascist authoritarian regime of the Democrats. Instead, we're just getting a different one. And you might cheer it on because you like it this time, but you won't like it next time. And that is where things get very, very, very scary. And the precedents are set. And what do we do? How are we going to fix it? Who's going to finally come in and actually fix it? Today is your lucky day. Field of Greens just kicked off a huge St. Paddy's Day sale. Get 30% off when you use code LUCK. Look, we don't always eat as healthy as we should, but Field of Greens has your back. One delicious glass is packed with a rainbow of doctor-selected fruits and veggies to support heart and kidney health, metabolism, and more. So even when you go for the burger instead of a salad, you're giving your body the good stuff it needs by just drinking your Field of Greens. And during their St. Paddy's Day sale, you can save some green while you drink your greens. Save 30% on all their popular flavors and bundles when you use code LUCK. So whether Field of Greens is already part of your routine or you've been waiting to give it a try, now is your chance to save big because the sale is only on for a few days, so don't miss out. So go to fieldofgreens.com, use promo code LUCK. That's fieldofgreens.com, promo code LUCK. Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson show, which has a new show time. Catch the full Kim Iverson show, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Head to KimIversonShow.com. See you there.